Yes, yes. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. Hope everyone has dined sufficiently and that the Georgetown hospitality is as nice as it once was. I am really pleased to introduce our next activity, which will be a panel discussion. It's something we've been doing these past few years, sort of called a presidential panel, but this is one where we really want to focus on service providers, and as we've been talking about throughout the day, kind of a theme, folks who also have the experience of being forced to move, being forced to migrate, but again, not running from that, but facing it and turning it into something beautiful. My father used to always tell me that in our history here in this country as Black Americans, oftentimes our culture is responding to adversity with beauty. And we are going to have people from around the world who are part of our community who really embody that. So our panel is called From Pain to Promise. Formerly displaced professionals share insights on community healing. I like that title. The only thing I don't like is that it feels like it's linear, like you go from pain to promise and that's it. Everything's good from there on, but it can be pain and promise all at the same time. But we're going to get into that, and what we're going to do, I'm going to introduce our stellar cohort, and then I will ask everyone to maybe introduce themselves for like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that. But very briefly, let me start with Segenet Kadir, who is here to my immediate left. She works with Asylum Works, Health and Wellness Program. She's a program manager. She works directly with clients. She supervises therapeutic case managers and fellows. Back home in Addis Ababa, she was a licensed practicing lawyer. And again, in terms of our sort of interdisciplinary and wide net in terms of service provision, Segenet can talk about that. My good friend and brother, Leance Biamana, who unfortunately, apparently they canceled his flight today. So he's here with us remotely, virtually, and I really appreciate it. Leance is a mental health services leader. He's the director of U.S. Clinical Services at the Center for Victims of Torture. Prior to that, and when we first met, he was the director at TASC, the Torture Abolition and Survivor Support Coalition, one of our programs here, perhaps still the only that is always survivor-driven. And I've just always been amazed, and he's done a lot of work in his home country of Rwanda with the Clinton Health Access Initiative and Partners in Health. I'd also like to introduce Neris Gonzalez, who is here with us. I'm looking at the biography, but I almost feel like everything you need to know about Neris you saw before lunch, the love, the energy, the enthusiasm that she brings to this work. She has been working for years against unjust conditions. She underwent difficult things she will talk more about, starting back in 1979. She's been central to the development of programs at the Marjorie Kovler Center, social projects for Hispanic migrants. She has returned to her home country of El Salvador and done work, and one of the things I love, at the age of 59, she graduated with a degree in social work. This one is here. And she's currently working in a program for unaccompanied migrant children. And last but certainly not least, Ogoke Ngozi Gladys, who's from Nigeria, and she's also been supporting fellow survivors and advocating. And before lunch, Lisa Henry mentioned PRAWA, the Nigerian Rehabilitation Center, and Ogoke is a major player there, and she's part of IRCT's Survivor Advisory Board, representing Sub-Saharan Africa. So what an amazing crew, and I'm just proud to be with y'all. I would like to ask Segenet, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit more about you?
Thank you. But you've already said so many things about me. So I was practicing lawyer back home after I moved to the US. Because of personal experience, I decided to study social work, and I was fortunate enough to get scholarship at Columbia University, did my social work. And I was with Asylum Works for a long period of time. And it's an honor to serve someone like me, and it was a healing process for me, and it's will be. And I'm currently clinically licensed, so I'm proud of myself.
Yes, yes. All right, I'm going to go back and forth between live and virtual. And I would like to ask, Ngoke, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your experiences, please? Ngoke and Ngozi Gladys, oh, did we just lose you?
We are having some internet issues.
Okay, I was going to say, must have been something I said. All right. It's usually the case. So let me switch up, change plans, and perhaps Neris, you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your experiences and what brings you here.
Buenas tardes para todos y todas.
So good afternoon to everyone and everyone she.
Soy de El Salvador y crecí en un pequeño cantón con una abuela muy fuerte.
So I'm from El Salvador. I grew up in a small town with a very strong grandma.
Mi adolescencia me agarró la persecución, escuadrones de la muerte y luego la guerra.
So during my adolescence, we had the persecutions, we have the war, and then we have death.
Entonces aprendí de la guerra, aprendí de la persecución y luego fui torturada.
So I learned from war, I learned from persecution. Later I was tortured.
Por enseñar a leer, a escribir y enseñar los números.
Because I was teaching how to read, how to write, and the numbers.
Después de la guerra, yo siempre no terminé mi bachillerato.
So after the war, I never finished my high school.
Pero después de la guerra hice todo el esfuerzo para hacerme licenciada en trabajadora social.
But after the war, I made all efforts to become licensed to be a social worker.
En El Salvador.
In El Salvador.
Y eso me ayudó mucho porque aprendí la universidad de la vida y después la universidad académica.
So this taught me a lot. I learned from life first, the University of Life, and then I learned at the academic level university.
Y eso me hizo fuerte para poder yo venir ayudando a otros jóvenes.
That made me strong in order to help the others.
Aparte del dolor y los sufrimientos, pero eso es pequeñita historia.
Besides all the suffering, all the pain, but that becomes a little small story later.
¿Puedo seguir?
Thank you so very much. I appreciate that.
Y también quiero agradecer a Kobler Center, a NCTTP, por haberme invitado a estar en este gran honor del simposio y compartir con ustedes también. Y gracias por los organizadores de todo lo que han hecho en el evento. Estoy muy orgullosa.
But I would like to really thank the Cover Center and also NCTTP and everyone that brought me to this symposium to have this high honor to share with all the organizers here.
Thank you, and you're so very welcome. I love your idea of the University of Life. I think I still have an incomplete on some things there, but I would like to reach out to my brother Leonce. Leonce, would you be so kind as to share a little bit about you and what brought you to this work, sir?
Thank you so much. My name is Leonce. I'm the Director of Clinical Services at CVT for the US programs. I started at CVT in 2023. Previously, I did work for the Torture, Abolition, and Survivor Coalition International Task. What I have learned there as Executive Director was the survivors able to run their own programs and actually survivors bringing in facilitators from other communities for what they need. So the survivors will decide, we need this kind of facilitation and support. Then the survivors will hire from other, professionals depending on the need that they have. And I know that in many organizations now, it's the other way around, where we're trying to hire survivors to help our work. So I think I learned a lot from that experience. I'm here in the US as an asylum seeker, and I'm originally from Rwanda. And back in my country, that's when I got interested in this work. So we'll share more, but really happy to be here.
Thank you so much to all of you, and I'm hoping that when we are able to reconnect with Okoke Ngozi Gladys, we will also bring her into the conversation and take a break so we can hear about her as well. But I wanted just to start maybe even at the level of helping us all to understand the notion of intergenerational trauma. And I'm wondering, how have the historical wounds in your particular homelands and in your experience, how have they echoed from one generation to another? And whomever would like to start.
I can go first. I think it's very important. We normally focus on someone who came to this country, especially as an immigrant. We tend to focus more getting help for someone who's here, but not the kids, because usually the kids usually integrate so quickly, but we don't understand. What we don't usually understand is the parents who've been through a lot and who doesn't heal, they're gonna parent, or they're parenting their children who's living in. And the children, and it's hard for them to understand their children's life, especially in the US. And I think it's gonna hinder, or it's hindering their, to practice their parent, like to be a good parent, it's gonna be hard for them because they have to thrive here, they have to survive here, they have to go out for work, and the immigration issue is, to get the immigration status is very hard in this country, and they have to look for food or any other thing, and they don't have time to process what they have been through back home and after they come here. And remember, it's not only what happened to them in the past, but also integrating in the new environment and processing the ambiguous laws and everything. They tend to put that aside, especially parenting, especially the parents. Now they're parenting their children in similar way without healing, and they are also facing another trauma in this country. So imagine how hard it is. So it's very important to take into consideration of this intergeneration trauma, which is like open up the space for them. When families come to our door, it's not only about them. Usually they come for resources. They might come to your door saying like, okay, I need to fix my immigration status. I need housing. I need this and that. But beyond that, we need to see them as a human being who've been through a lot of trauma, and they're parenting their kids, and the kids is not getting the proper attention they need. And the kids, remember, they need to thrive. And also they are going to compete, or they're going to school in people who are born and raised here who's getting like proper attention. So we have to see that in broader perspective, I would say so.
Thank you very much for those insights. I see that we are joined by Madam Okoke Ngozi Gladys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Beautiful, beautiful. While we have this connection, my name is Hawthorne Smith. Nice to meet you. And I was wondering, and everyone here is just really excited to hear a little bit about you, your background, and what brought you to this work. A little bit about your experiences, if you would mind sharing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is, distinguished guests, colleagues, survivors, and friends. My name is Ngozi Ogoke. I'm a torture survivor from Nigeria. I speak to you not just as a victim of intergenerational trauma. I am an advocate and a human rights worker working for survivors. I'm also the daughter of that community that has suffered historical trauma and its subsequent generation paying the cost. I was actually born into the shadow of the Biafra Civil War that occurred between 1967 and 1970 in the southeastern part of Nigeria. A pogrom that's cost about 4 million lives. Majority of this genocide population were children who died of starvation, yes. And so you can see where I'm coming from. I didn't witness the war myself, but I grew up into its consequences. I inherited pains, I inherited poverty, I inherited stigma for the crime that I never committed. And so something very important I must mention in today's discussion is that the trauma from that genocide was never buried. Rather, it was transmitted into my family, my community, and till date, we are still, because there was no healing mechanism at the time, and so till date, I suffer from social exclusion. And so you can see what drove me to what I am doing today, talking about survivors, talking about the advocacy, helping them get justice. Yeah, thank you.
Ngozi, thank you very, very much for that. And I think what you were just saying is a perfect segue into something that Neris was talking about before in terms of personal experience. And I wanted to ask, you know, a little bit about the impact that this intergenerational trauma you may have experienced in your life as well.
Oh.
Yeah, it's okay.
Trauma intergeneracional.
Sí.
¿Cómo lo ha sufrido usted en su vida?
Oh.
El trauma que se transmite por generación.
Sí, como, bueno, quiero como venir con ese hilo transgeneracional y quizás voy a empezar de como mi abuela, me acuerdo que habló de su mamá, luego de la abuela de la mamá. Entonces, ¿cómo venían ellas ese nudo o esas raíces que vienen? No sé, yo tenía un dibujo, pero mi abuela me contó que ella luchó en el 1932 con la primera que ella se acordó de 1932. Ella era joven y peleó porque mataron a los campesinos porque los europeos estaban robando el añil, que es lo que ando aquí puesto, y era el oro azul en ese tiempo.
So, very well. I would like to come to intergenerational trauma, talking about my grandma, and she was telling me that her mom was also, she has actually showing me the roots of the family in a diagram. I don't recall very well, but it is in 1932 that she told me that she was fighting as much as she could remember, that when she was very young, they were killing the peasants on the fields. And it was the Europeans that wanted to have this aniline, this tint, the blue gold that we call it at the time, that right now it's staying in my scarf that I have here. So they were fighting for that because that was considered the blue gold at the time.
Luego ella hablaba sobre la guerra de Vietnam y yo era una niña como de unos 9, 11 años por ahí. Yo solo escuchaba, ni idea tenía sobre lo de Vietnam. Entonces, y luego ella nos contaba, pero no entendíamos como niños. Y ella tampoco había una terapia para mi abuela ni para mi mamá. Nadie. ¿Cuánto sufrió mi mamá también? Entonces, y cuando empezó la persecución, que yo ya tenía como 17, 18 años, por haber ayudado a mis campesinos, que mi origen es campesina. Yo no sabía que por enseñar a leer y a escribir y contar los números me iba a traer una guerra, ni idea tenía que iba a haber una guerra.
So when the Iran war came, I was just 9 years old. I didn't have any idea what a war was. We didn't understand as children. They didn't tell us. And my grandma didn't follow therapy or anything. As well, my mom didn't enroll in therapy, so they suffer a lot. Therefore, they started with this type of persecution later, when I was 17, 18 years old. And it was just because we were helping the peasants. I am of an agriculture family, and I never imagined, because of teaching them how to read or teaching them how to write and the numbers, that they will cause a war and they will persecute us.
Entonces ella me decía, hija, no, ya no enseñas a leer ni a escribir, ni en los números porque te van a perseguir. Brotan los escuadrones de la muerte, que me imagino que ustedes como profesionales ya deben de conocer al SOA, que es la Escuela de las Américas, donde forman a los escuadrones de la muerte.
So at the time, they told me, my daughter, don't stop teaching them how to write and write, how to read and write, because they're going to persecute you. And they have the death squads at the time there. And I'm sure you are the professionals, you are very familiar with the death squads. They were trained at the School of the Americas that we had.
Entonces, exactamente, nos llegó el segundo Vietnam al país de nosotros, a El Salvador, y luego me torturan, pasé 2 semanas torturándome con crueles.
So exactly so. This was a second Vietnam that came to San Salvador, to El Salvador, and I suffered torture for 12 weeks. It was cruel, it was grave torture.
Luego viene la guerra, mi cantón quedó como fantasma, destruido totalmente. Nos sacaron a puro bombazos, me desenraizaron a pura bomba, a pura tortura. Entonces, ahora entiendo, cuando vine a este país, que era todo lo contradictorio, porque yo venía a un tratamiento y yo no sabía que el tratamiento solo iba a venir una semana y me iba a ir, y no sabía de la dimensidad que tenía este tratamiento, porque ni idea, después de una guerra no hay psicólogos que te atiendan el dolor que deja la niñez. Cuando ves, sentís, lo vivís. En la guerra de matar a los niños, especialmente quiero hablar por los niños.
Later the war came.
Voy a terminar ahora. Que son aniquilados y destruidos por una guerra.
Later the war came, and my small town, it became a ghost town. It was completely destroyed by rockets, by bombs, and they came with torture. And then, now I can understand that, because I did come to this country. I didn't have any idea at all how my treatment was going to be. I thought it's going to take 1 week, and then I will go back to my country. But at that time, I couldn't imagine how immense the psychological damage will be of a war, because the pain that you suffer in your youth, to see, to feel, to live how they kill the kids. And let me finish, but the way they annihilated the kids, that is something that stays with you.
Entonces, después que la persecución, yo soy católica pero avanzada, la católica avanzada de la teología de la liberación, fuimos perseguidos por sacerdotes, monjas, catequistas, maestros, etc. Pero, para no hacer tan larga la gran historia, pero eso después de la guerra, trabajé con la posguerra, que es la repoblación que viene después de la guerra, que te destruyen, te dejan en ceniza el país. Llega la repoblación. O sea, hasta ahí va.
Therefore, persecution. I am a Catholic, but a progressive Catholic. We follow the liberation theory. So there were priests, nuns, teachers. I don't want to make history too long, but after the war, you get repopulation. That is the post-war, because everything had come to ashes, and we need to repopulate, to build.
Sí, entonces, cuando me toca que ya trabajar, buscar mi vida, socializarme, que no es fácil, que después que te deja destruido. Tengo marcadas las 2 administraciones de George Bush, padre e hijo. Cruelmente, tírale sin piedad todo lo que se mueva. Entonces, esa escuela me hizo estudiar por qué la guerra en mi país. Cuando ya sané un poquito, gracias a Kobler Center, que me hizo esta cobertura de poco a poco, y no es fácil, pero sí le metí esfuerzo, ganas, porque no es solamente la terapia, sino tenés que estar involucrada con tu comunidad, con la sociedad, para poder sanar. Solo la terapia no es lo suficiente. Necesitas estar. Voy a seguir.
Therefore, when I started working, when I start my life, I start my social life. I need to socialize, and it's not something that comes easy after what they destroyed. So it was 2 administrations, Bush dad and Bush son. They were shooting without pity everything that moves, let's say. And I started this sort of school asking me why war in my country. And I was healing a little bit. It was thanks to the COE Center. And it's not easy. You really have to put a lot of effort. You have to be involved with your community, with your society, and you start healing, and because therapy alone is not enough.
Entonces, ¿qué se me hizo? Entender más la historia de mi país, y gracias que puedo leer un poquito, pero entiendo un poquito, y leí la historia de este país. Y es así como yo ahora entiendo esta guerra de negocio, porque las guerras son puro negocio. Se puede construir lo material, pero la vida de estos infantes, de estos niños indefensos, no la pueden construir, porque construyen encima de la sangre de los niños, y no los matan, los matan con crueldad. Eso me ha costado para poder yo estar hablando aquí enfrente de ustedes, y gracias por estar. Sé que es duro, es muy difícil, pero quizás mi corazón ya tiene pedacitos de callos, y gracias que me he cuidado para poder yo seguir ayudando a los niños, que mi trabajo ha sido con adolescentes más que todo, con mi país y en la frontera de Texas, con niños no acompañados y familias de migración. Y en un barrio muy difícil aquí en Chicago, allá en Chicago, en Pilsen. Ya voy a explicar estas 3 experiencias que he ayudado a muchos jóvenes y niños.
So that made me understand the history of my country, and I was able to read and understand a little bit. But I also was reading the history of the United States. Then I could understand that war is a war of business. The only reason to do a war is for business. The material things that you can rebuild easily, but life, the infants, the kids, that they were helpless. So that you cannot build. That is turned into blood of the children. And they didn't just kill them, they killed them with cruelty. So yes, it took me a lot to be here in front of you. It was hard, it was difficult, but I think I'm picking up the pieces of my heart, and I was able to take care of myself in order to help the others, to help adolescents, teenagers, in the work that I did in my country, and also in Texas, the organization 1 Million Immigration, and also in Chicago with the organization Pilsen. These 3 experiences that I'm going to be able to explain to you here today.
So, Neris, I would like to just say how remarkable, how much strength you have shown, not only to live through those experiences, but to be able to share those experiences with us here today. And we are so appreciative. And you said something very important several times. You referred to the children, the adolescents, those innocents. And Ngozi had said earlier that she had inherited, that she was suffering for a crime she never committed. So I wanted to ask a general question to the panel about the impact on youth, either that you have seen back in your home countries or in the work that you're doing here. How have the youth been affected, and how have you been able to engage to try to help with their healing? I don't know, Leonce, if you would like to start there.
Voy a comenzar con mis 2 hijas y niñas de la guerra.
So I'm going to start with my 2 daughters. They are children of the war.
Hasta ahorita no he terminado la reconciliación con mis hijas.
I haven't finished yet with reconciliation phase with my daughters.
Pero en mis trabajos, en cada rostro del niño, de los niños, yo veo el rostro de mis hijas.
But at work, when I see the faces of the kids, I see the faces of my little daughters.
Y veo el rostro de los otros niños que han asesinado, y eso me ha ayudado tanto.
And I see the faces of the other killed children, and that's had given me so much.
Para poder conversar con otros jóvenes, aprendí a hacer dinámica de educación popular para no entrar con los jóvenes con el dolor de un solo. Y eso ayuda muchísimo.
And I had to learn to do techniques in popular dynamic of education in order to express this to the other young people without transferring the pain. That helped me a lot.
Por ejemplo, el primer conflicto en mi país.
So let's start first conflict in my country.
Con los jóvenes de la repoblación.
So with the young that we were going to repopulate.
Entonces hicimos dinámicas para poder cómo íbamos a repoblarnos de nuevo, a rehacer la vida, nacer la vida a través de plantas, a través de jardines orgánicos, un jardín terapéutico, pero queríamos comparar para darle ánimo a los niños y que su mente podía estar adentro de un jardín y podía estar socializada en la comunidad. Fue fuerte, pero lo logramos hacer varias comunidades.
So the dynamic we used was to rebuild, to be reborn actually, and we use this dynamic to work with plants, work with organic species, sort of therapy, and we were comparing those gardens, those plants, and we noticed that it will uplift the kids. It will take their mind away being inside the garden, and also will allow them to socialize within the community. It was hard, but it was done.
Esto es en mi país, ¿verdad? Durante la repoblación. Mi segunda experiencia en Pilsen, diferente conflicto, pero el trauma es la misma y la tortura es lo mismo.
So this was in my country, right? But then we work in Pilsen. That was completely different conflict, but the trauma is exactly the same.
Entonces yo venía de una guerra, de una posguerra, y cuando llegué a Pilsen ya estaba una guerra de pandillas, de droga, de carteles, etc. ¿Y quién era? Los que estaban involucrados, la vulnerabilidad. Que eso es otro tipo de conflicto, pero es el mismo conflicto, nada más que con diferentes. Pero eso me ayudó a mí también para ver cómo tratar a estos niños. En mi programa que yo tenía trabajando con Ecovida, que con todo mi esfuerzo para poder sanar mi terapia, hice una organización pequeña, Ecovida, para dar clases después de escuela a los niños que ya iban a entrar al bachillerato, para poder, que un programa que ayudábamos por lo menos al año, evitábamos que iban 125 niños a la pandilla, porque después de la escuela se quedaban con el programa de Ecovida, que era Educación Ecológica Ambiental, y ellos estaban muy emocionados porque después de la clase vienen los papás, entraba con mi programa después de escuela y luego los padres los recogen. Entonces es así como iba ayudando a los jóvenes, que estoy orgullosamente porque hay muchos que me han escrito y ahora ya son profesionales en diferentes áreas de la universidad.
So in Pilsen, it was a different conflict. There were the gangs, the drugs, the traffickers, the cartels, and the conflict, we call it vulnerability. It was the same trauma, but different characteristics. It helped me to start a treatment for my kids. I founded the organization Ecovida, Eco-Life, in order to heal them. And what we did is after school classes. So the kids were exposed to the gangs, but they will come to our after school before getting into the senior year in high school. So we will, we had 125 kids that we were able to...
Por año.
Per year, 125 kids per year that we were able to divert from the gangs. And it was our ecologic education and program. The parents love us because the parents will come to pick up their children at the end of the classes, and that was the way that we had the youth. I'm very proud because now these kids write to me and they say, I have become professional because of you.
That is such a beautiful example. But I just want to, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just also want to make sure that we can learn from other examples. I don't know, second, if you would like to.
Gracias, me tienen que parar porque después, cuando haya un tiempo, voy a contar la historia de la frontera en Texas.
Yes, thank you. And you need to stop me with this. But yes, if there was time, we were going to comment on the work that we're doing at the borders now.
We have plenty of time. Okay, so in terms of any youth work, Leon, Secondnet, anything?
Yeah, sure. For me, we have a lot of clients who, for example, I remember one of my clients who opened up later on about her son who was going to school here. He was 10 years old by the time. So he was showing different behaviors that she was not aware of, she was not used to before. And including bedwetting. So she opened up about that to me, and I had to explain it to her. Like, they flee out of war, both of them, to come to the US. So I have to explain it to her, the intergenerational trauma her son facing and down process trauma she has. But she told me that she's very busy and she cannot see therapy right now because she has to deal with so many things at the same time. But she was also hesitant about consulting school counselors for her son, mainly because she thinks seeing a therapy back home is she doesn't want to think basically her son is crazy to see a therapist, and she thought that this is going to be recorded in the future, and she doesn't want to ruin his employment, education status in the future. So I have to sit down with her, explain it to her, normalize seeing therapy here in the US. And also, after all, her son deserves healings, and she also deserves healing. And it took us like more than 6 months in order to convince her for her son to see a therapist. And he slowly getting better after that as well. So I realized that her son was also getting all this traumatic experience before. So, yeah. And I think it took her also 2 years in order to see therapy as well, because she has to settle in. Yeah.
Thank you so very much for that. And perhaps we can fold that question about youth to a sort of more general question about what are some things we can do? What are some ways that we can help to break the cycle of intergenerational trauma? And I would like to turn to our panelists who are not physically here with us, but to make sure we hear your voices. Ngozi, do you have any thoughts about that? Seems like the internet might still be acting up, unfortunately. Leonce, when we talk about ways of potentially breaking the cycle of intergenerational trauma, do you have thoughts?
Thank you so much. Quickly, I will share some statistics from back in my country where, as you know, in 1994, my country had a genocide against Tutsis, and there's been recent research about intergenerational trauma, and that research, I'm sure many of you are aware of it, but more than 40% of children born after the genocide have signs of PTSD. And those are kids who were born after the genocide. So now they are 20, 23. And in terms of the finding of that research was that trauma is mainly the biological arguments, but also really through parenting. So I will jump to your question, Doctor, and say that at CVT, we invest a lot in parenting work with our clients, where we really take time to discuss how their traumas potentially affects their parenting style and their parenting patterns. And on the other side, here in Atlanta, Georgia, we do work within two schools, and in Minnesota, we work with one school where we talk to the kids in middle school and high school on how the parenting they're receiving might be informed by what their parents went through. So talking to the kids to learn how to discern those patterns, how they can actually support their parents, and how they can recognize that communication of trauma between parents and children or young adults. That has really given us more leverage on working with the children, especially to eventually maybe break that cycle of intergenerational trauma. The second thing that we have done, we continue to do like many other people are doing, is to actually allow those children to be part of the advocacy efforts to eradicate torture. We know that we heard from survivors themselves that this is something that brings them back, that gives them back their voice, sometimes really help them to heal. But it's something that we are finding out that actually their children as well are interested in eradicating or preventing things that made their parents go through what they went through. So those are quickly things that we've been doing at CVT so far. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you so very much with that. And I love when one question kind of segues to the next one where we were going, because I was going to ask, in your experience, and this is for the entire panel, how can survivors help other survivors to heal? And I don't know, I'm going to ask Ngozi, how is our connection? Because I want to make sure we hear your voice.
Ngozi, you're on mute.
Closer.
You're on mute.
Okay, maybe if you hit the unmute button. Okay, well, while we're working on that again, open question to the panel. How can survivors help other survivors to heal?
I would say community. I know previously, while I was a client with Task and Asylum Works, we used to have a community coming from different countries. We share our experiences because sometimes it's hard to share our experiences with other people, especially when you are new, or they may not have the same feeling you're feeling, and you may not be comfortable enough to share your experience. Our community share your experience, especially someone who went through similar process and they are thriving instead of surviving. If they're sharing their experience to their fellow survivors, it's very, very helpful, and I would say it's very impactful. Yeah.
Nerys, is there anything you'd like to add about that? Survivors helping survivors?
Yes, survivors helping survivors. When survivors speak out, are you hearing me clearly?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
are you hearing me?
Yes, we are. We hear you
good.
now.
Very good. When survivors speak out, they help other survivors. Because talking about intergenerational trauma, I keep using my perspective as a person, as a victim of intergenerational trauma. When survivors speak out, they help other survivors. When we have survival-led healing, it helps to truly touch on the areas of, other survivors. When survivors speak, when survivors advocate, policies also change. So in those areas where you can actually assist other survivors, when you advocate, you are actually helping another survivor. When you speak out, you are actually helping other survivors. So many other ways you can help other survivors. As a survivor, yeah. Was I heard?
You were heard loud and clear.
Was I heard?
You were heard loud and
Okay.
clear and deeply understood and appreciated. Yes, indeed. And I would just like to add
My network is just disturbing.
as someone involved in therapeutic work with this, I've been running a group now for French-speaking African survivors. We are in our 30th year. And to see the, thank you, the power, the impact of what happens within our group sessions, outside of our group sessions, and all of that, a true sense of community, as you spoke about, a true sense of family, and that the survivors themselves, there are certain things that I can say that are just words, but when they come from another survivor, they hit in a different place. They come much more profound and easily understood. So I really do appreciate that. I want to ask a question to everybody, because this is work. It's beyond work. It's life, and it's something again that does touch us very profoundly. How do you manage to navigate the emotions? Sometimes we talk about this in terms of boundaries, but beyond that, how do we navigate the emotions so that you can remain effective, but also tolerate and continue forth with this important work that you do? How do you manage that? And that's open for anybody.
Pues yo pienso que a mí me ayudó
I think that what helped me
Pienso que nos ayudamos, los sobrevivientes
The
ayudamos
survivors help each other.
como otros jóvenes o niños
Like
que
other youth
no tienen la
or
esperanza de
children who
salir
don't have
adelante,
any hope of
como ella dijo,
a future life.
que no quieren, porque piensan,
Because they think,
piensan que que como quiero decir, duele.
what I want to say is,
Duele porque las
It
familias, a
hurts
veces los
because
padres no están preparados
the
como
family,
atender a
the
estos
parents are
niños.
not prepared to
Entonces
deal with this
los
situation.
programas
And the
fuera de
programs
casa
outside at home,
es como más se puede. Yo siento que podemos ayudar a estas
I feel that
generaciones
we can help this
porque
generation.
como mi abuela me ayudó
As my grandma helped me,
generacionalmente,
from
ahora que hay
that
más
generation,
tecnología
and now that there's more technology,
o más en este país grande
in
y
this,
en un país que no hay, a veces no hay nada, pero
larger country,
la palabra de
in our country,
nosotros
so that we don't have
como
anything,
sobrevivientes
but the words from us
ayuda
as
a
survivors
levantar
helped us
el ánimo y
lift
como
the
a
spirit
decirle tú puedes,
and say you can do it.
tú puedes
You can do it
para seguir tu terapia,
to continue your
para ser alguien
therapy,
en esta
to
vida,
be someone in this life,
para que tú puedas ser tú y tú
to
vas a ayudar a
to
otros
be
jóvenes.
you, and so you can help others.
Entonces la motivación
And the motivation,
con cosas concretas,
with
el programa,
concrete things,
acompañarlos,
in particular this
convivencia,
program, to accompany them,
alegría, todo eso
to
ayuda
interact
a
with
los
them.
jóvenes
Everything helps the
a
youth
poder que ellos salgan de esa
to be
crisis,
able
porque es
to
una
get out
crisis.
of this crisis.
Yo me tardé como más de 20
It
años
took me a long time, around 20
hablar,
years, to be able
porque
to
yo no
speak up,
tenía quien,
because
me daba
I
miedo,
did not have anyone. I was
me
afraid.
daba miedo.
I was scared.
Y ese miedo
And that fear,
lo vine a entender
I was able to understand it here when I came here.
y era paradójico, el país que me había ido a destruir,
And it was kind of ironic, the country that
pero entendí que el pueblo norteamericano es
assisted
una
me, and
cosa
I understood that
y la administración es otra cosa.
the
Entonces,
Americans are one thing and the administration is another thing.
esta experiencia para
That
mí
experience for me was
he ayudado a motivar a otros jóvenes
made me
a que puedan hablar,
able
expresar,
to
porque
motivate
está bien
others
adentro de ellos.
to speak up of what it is, what they have internalized deep inside them,
Y más cuando son hombres.
especially when they're men.
Uno de mujer, las niñas,
Sometimes
soltamos un poco más.
women, we can endure a little bit more.
El hombre
Men,
le cuesta más a los jóvenes.
it is more difficult. It is more difficult for young men.
Entonces, yo siento que es así como poco a poco,
And I feel
junto
that
con los profesionales
little by
de la
little, along
materia,
with professionals in the subject,
podemos ayudar a muchos jóvenes que están
we can
afectados.
help
Y
those
cada día más.
affected children, and every day more and more.
Entonces hay que luchar por la justicia
We
y la
have to fight for the
reparación,
justice and
no solo
reparation,
por la
not
justicia.
just for justice.
Thank you. And the question remains for other panelists in terms of balancing, finding that emotional equilibrium to do this work as survivors and community members.
Yeah, for me.
Thank you. Am I coming out clear?
Yes, we hear you.
Am I coming out clear? Okay, thank you.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you very much. Working with trauma victims, helping them heal could be very challenging. Yes, could be very, very challenging. Speaking from my perspective as a victim of genocide, helping such people who still live with pain, who still live with the trauma of the past, especially when the cause of that genocide still exists in the country. So helping to speak to these people, helping them to move on could be very challenging, but then we just have to do something to help them move on with life, because In my country, during that genocide, there was this 3R policy. The 3R policy promised that if there was a ceasefire, there was going to be a rehabilitation, a reconstruction, and reconciliation. But after the war, none of that policy was taken into consideration. It was just even infliction of further pain, because shortly after the war ended, some people were, the entire region that the genocide was committed, lost their properties to a policy the government tagged abandoned property. So if you are from the southeast and you have your property in the southwest, your property, you definitely lose it. Is tagged an abandoned property. And if you have monies in the bank, and then after the war, you were told that your money has been frozen. So rather than bring healing mechanism, the government rather inflicted further pain. So speaking to these people, when they, I know of a victim whom each time you're talking to him, he says, but that property there belongs to my father, and somebody else is occupying it. So you see, the trauma is just ongoing. And so what we do as co-survivors is we just have to preach resilience. We preach resilience to such people that this trauma were transmitted to, because they didn't witness the war, they didn't participate in it, but by gene, by history, stories were told them. They read papers, you surf the internet, search for Biafra genocide, it is there, everything is open, they are reading. So the trauma is just a kind of continuity. But as a survivor, I have witnessed such trauma myself, aside from inheriting. So I use my situation because I got judgment from the court, yes, even though the court judgment was not executed. But that gave me some kind of confidence. It gave me the voice. It gave me strength that knowing my boundaries, knowing my rights as a citizen of the country. So moving around these people that are generation facing the same situation again, you keep talking to them, you keep preaching resilience to them. Some of them listen, but because I have seen so many of them turn from a very bad situation, I have seen some of them move on. I've seen so many of them, put those things behind them, look forward to the future, believing that the future is bright and they could enhance. Thank you.
It's wonderful. Second, that I know you were about ready to speak.
Yeah, I was remembering like the first time when I came, I became like Asylum Works client. It was really hard for me to speak up because I was crying because I didn't get the space to process my own trauma. So the question I was getting from my case manager my social worker it helped me to process my trauma. So after I began to work in this field, my promise was to do whatever it's in power to support other people because I see myself in them. And it was at some point, like my supervisor told me that, hey, we need you for the long run. So you have to take care of yourself, like self-care. And I have to use those supervision meetings to talk about like the cases that hits me the most and to keep myself re-traumatizing and having all those feelings. That's very helpful, especially after I went to school and getting all the trainings and having that supervisory meeting was very helpful, especially in terms of boundary, helping someone who speaks the same language, went through similar trauma, and how do you want to share your experience with them? How much is too much to share that experience? How do you keep yourself from that? It is very helpful. We have a consultation meeting in our organization to talk through it, and also my supervisor was very helpful. She will make sure that I am accountable, not working so hard to the point that I'm collapsing. So that was very helpful for me.
Thank you. Leon, did you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. As Tegan had said, I think there's a lot of power, a healing power in helping others. And I think many survivors actually are seeking for such opportunities to help other survivors who went through the same. But at the same time, I think as I speak to survivors who also practitioners, there's always room for making sure that there is that balance between the resilience and the vulnerability of the person, knowing when it's time to step back from a situation, from a client, from a therapy session, it is a strength to know when to step back while you're doing this work as also a survivor. The second thing that I found helpful was to many of the centers I know they practice strength-based model, where the survivor actually in front of you is the leader, is the lead of that therapy, of that healing session, and you're there as a facilitator. So that really makes things much easier for the provider who's also a survivor if they can let the other person on the other side to lead. So to have the client lead the session. So it's much easier on the provider who is eventually a survivor themselves. Yeah, so those are the things I wanted to contribute here.
Thank you so very much. Another question I wanted to pose to the panel. Just when you look back over your experience, your life arc, can you think of a time, a moment, a victory where something was going on either within your personal life or your professional life where you knew that you were on a good path and you felt good in moving forward and engaging in this sort of work, in this sort of activity? Is that something you can reflect on?
Pues yo pienso que yo no elegí este trabajo, ¿verdad? Me obligaron a
I
hacerlo.
didn't choose this situation. I was obligated. I
Y,
was forced.
Y ahora
And
que,
now that,
como agarrando palabras que dijo Guzzi,
piggybacking
ella, él,
to the work that she,
en mi
Ms.
experiencia que he
said,
tenido,
from my
yo
experience that I
pienso
have
que hacer justicia está bien. Yo ya hice justicia con 2 generales
to get justice, it makes you
que vivían aquí.
better, feel better, and I did do justice with 2 generals that live actually in this country.
Pero la reparación,
But the reparations,
como dijo ella, perdió toda su herencia.
material. She lost everything,
Igual que yo.
everything material,
Pero
just like me.
La reparación es como nos va a ayudar
But
más
the
a
reparation is
nosotros, los
what's
que ya
gonna
somos sobrevivientes y
help
los que
us,
estamos
the
ayudando
survivors, the
para
ones
seguir.
that are
Porque si no hay
helping others,
justicia, no hay
because if there is
reparación,
no justice, there's no
siento yo a veces un
reparations.
desequilibrio.
I think there is a
Porque
disequilibrium.
vamos a hablar siempre de
because we're always
justicia,
going
vamos a
to talk
hablar,
about justice,
pero no vamos a ver
we're
esa
gonna always
reparación
talk
global
about,
que este gobierno, Estados Unidos,
but we're not going to talk about
tiene la
that this government from the
responsabilidad
United States has the responsibility
de ayudarnos, de ayudar a reparar.
to help with
Porque no puede ir
reparations.
impunemente a destruir un país, a destruir
Because
la
they
vida,
cannot invade another country
dejarlos
without any
torturados,
impunity and
traumatizados.
then leave them
y no hay reparación. Los acuerdos de paz
victims and there's no reparations.
es una negociación y es
The
una burla, no
peace
es un
talks,
dulce, es una
that's no
bofetada
reparation. That is like
para el ser humano.
making fun
Porque no hay reparación.
because there's no reparations.
Entonces, si la reparación viene
there's
junto con la justicia
Reparation along with justice.
y el responsable criminal,
In the criminal or the
eso va a ayudar
responsible,
más
that is
todavía
going to assist us
para
or
que
help
podamos
us
hacer
to be
nuestro trabajo
able to do our job
y decirle al otro que está dañado que viene la
and tell
transgeneración
that one person that
dañada.
is already damaged and tell the next generation.
Y si los impunes criminales no se
And-
les da
and
reparación,
those
no se
that
les da
have-
justicia,
that,
ellos
have
van a seguir destruyendo
Impunity, they're going to
los
continue
tejidos
to keep
sociales
destroying
a través del trauma
the social
todo un
thread
pueblo
of a whole town, a whole,
Nosotros podemos seguir hablando, ya
we can
más o
always
menos no estamos bien
keep talking
sanos,
and talking, but
pero tratamos como dijo él, ¿cómo hacen ustedes para hacerlo?
as what he said, how do you
No es
guys
fácil.
find that equilibrium? It's not easy
Para sobrevivir,
to be
comer,
able to
vivir, pagar
survive,
alquiler,
eat, pay
vivir en
rent,
este mundo
to live in this world,
y vivir con ese dolor.
and
La
to
vida se
live
termina,
life
¿no?
with that pain.
Pero la reparación
But the
creo
reparations,
que sería como el abono
it will be like just like
que le
fertilizing
echas a la planta para que
that
crezca
you
y que enseñarle a los
put
criminales
to
que no tan fácil
a
van a
plant,
decidir ir a tirar
for
a
it to grow.
bombas, a destruir un país.
and you can teach
Especialmente
the
los
criminals that it's just not easy just to throw bombs and they
Y
just
discúlpenme que alzo la voz porque yo
and
no lo puedo
and I
decir
apologize for
suave,
raising my voice.
porque si yo no saco mi voz,
If
me
I don't
duele y me
speak
voy a
up,
sangrar
it's
por dentro.
going to
y
affect
puedo
me.
morir.
I'm going to be in pain and I'm going to
Entonces, yo
bleed
tengo
from
que
inside.
mostrarle a
And I
los
just have to speak
jóvenes
up and I have to show the
que no
youth, our
estamos
youth,
vencidos,
that we are not,
que seguimos como sobrevivientes. Vamos a enseñar a que nos respeten.
that if we survive, if we continue survivors, we're going to be able to
Y he
continue
hablado
being
por todas
survivors.
partes,
And
en
we have
muchas
spoken in many
universidades de
other
este
places,
país,
in many universities in this country,
y especialmente con los gringos jóvenes
especially
estudiantes.
the young gringos in this country.
Cuando digo, lean la historia, no
When
respiren con
when I
los
say
pulmones de su
read
gobierno
the story,
y no solo naden,
and I just swim along,
¿cómo se llama? Bucear
just
la historia.
just go deep
¿Por
deep
qué la
in the story,
injusticia?
not just why they teach it, but just
¿Por
go
qué la
deep inside.
tortura?
Why there is torture?
Porque la tortura es la
Because
primera herramienta de
Torture
la guerra.
is the first tool of the war,
Y esas herramientas, esas
and
factorías,
those tools, those are
ya
the
conozco
factory.
las herramientas porque
And
ya las
I
viví en
know
una
all
cárcel
those tools because
clandestina.
I've already lived through them.
Y hay psicólogos
And there are
especiales para medirte
psychologists that
el
that
dolor.
specialize for
Entonces
those
nosotros miramos el
survivors,
dolor con una buena reparación.
to survivors of that sort of pain, and there needs to be a reparation.
Y eso es lo que, gracias por aguantarme, pero
And that's what I have
quería
to say,
sacarlo.
and thank you for bearing with me, but I just wanted to let it out.
No, we so appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. But Seganet, Leonce, any thoughts, any moment, any victory, anything that sticks out to you that let you know you were following a path that you could be proud of?
Yeah, at a personal level, as I said earlier, I'm proud of myself, like doing this work, especially like after connected with Asylum Works as a client. Then I started working as a paralegal outside of Asylum Works, of course. Then I applied for a community support worker position at Asylum Works, and they gave me the position. And I told myself, like, this is the work I want to do in the future, no matter what. Because it was a healing journey, as I said, for me, and it still is for me. That's why I decided to join social work school and get the training that I needed. At professional level, all the time when our clients get their immigration status and able to reunite with their family members, it's always a joy for me. I have one outstanding that comes to my mind, a case that I had been working with. He came to the U.S. and he was connected with us after 6 years, came to the U.S. and he left the country when his wife was pregnant, and at the time he was connected, his daughter was 6 years, and he always wanted to see her, touch her, and be with her. So it took us 2 years. It was not during this administration, it was before this administration. And the client was very lucky to get his paperwork in 2 years after he was connected with us. And he was reunited with his family members, able to see his daughter after 8 years, whom he'd never met, and see the family together and see that you contributed a little bit, but you changed the life of the people. It's always worth to do this work, so, yeah.
Brother Leonce, any thoughts?
Yeah, quickly. I think for me, it's mostly wherever I go, that task where I learn the culture where the survivors lead and make their own decision about their healing process. you know, when I arrived at CVT, I was really, really happy when I created the first Survivor Advisory Board. And beyond that, not only creating that, but also to make it almost mandatory that for any new program, survivors have to have a say on the design of that program and how it's going to be delivered. I think that gives me the hope that survivors in the future and most of the organization can make an impact on their own healing process, especially in program design, really. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. This next question is not on our prepared little group of questions here. This one's from me. And when I was introducing you folks and I was going through your bios, all of you are so well accomplished and have done so many different things, but there have been forced changes. Sometimes you've had to change your career path, or you've helped to start a program or something, and due to things beyond your control, perhaps that has come to a close and you've needed to start again somewhere else or create something new. And my question to you all is, where do you find that strength to keep going when something is foreclosed? How do you move on? How do you not give up but continue moving on? I don't know if that question is clear.
Okay, if I can go. Many of us here know about this recently ended CESIC programs, the Afghan programs that were time bounded. So like 3 years, you provide healing services and then you're done. So I think that was really tough on many people. And what helped us to really move forward was being creative in terms of how can we empower these amazing people to actually continue some of what they learned at CVT, to continue to support themselves and their communities. But also, how can we use less means to do more? Where we have, for example, continued the services using existing means at the organization. But what really kept me or us going was the hope that the 3 years we spent with these individuals and families, they have gained some momentum to keep going themselves within their communities and families. Thank you.
Okay, can I add something there?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. How we can keep moving on in a situation like this, as personally, from my perspective as a survivor, I have gone through the court processes. Before now, I was living in fear because of stories I've been told, because of books I have read, surfing the internet. And then I came to a point where I became a victim. I was traumatized myself. Now it's not about a transmission of trauma. I haven't gone through the torture myself. I had to push forward to go to the courts. So the judgments I got from the courts, it's a kind of strength. It gave me my human dignity. And I was able to connect to organizations like the IRCT, International Rehabilitation Council for Torture Victims. Having connected to these organizations, I have also become more emboldened to speak up. And because I've gotten judgments that, gave a judgment that the perpetrators of my torture were, asked to apologize to me, to pay compensations to me. My torture was declared illegal. My imprisonment was declared illegal. So all those things put together, giving me strength to speak up to other survivors. So when I talk to them, I make them understand that, look, if you sit back and hide without speaking up, you are not helping yourself, you're not helping the community. So I understand what they are going through, especially when you are facing situations that were past in the history, your parents and grandparents faced, and today as a survivor, as a somebody that has come to inherit problems you were not even part of. So it is usually very difficult, but they have to move on. They just have to move on, because I have seen hopeless individuals rebuild livelihoods. Yes, I have also seen fractured families reunite again. I have also seen resilience bloom. When resilience bloom in the life of survivors, you can see despair disappear. So it is very much possible as a survivor who has gone through all these situations, if you can really, be strong enough to talk to them. Let them understand what you are doing. Like some of them look at me today, this kind of strength from. And I just looked at them, I said, look, it's just an easy thing. If you sit there, you die. You die. You are allowed to. Just get up, speak up, mix up with so many organizations out there are willing to help you heal. So keeping calm is not it. As survivors of torture, like I said earlier when I started, I'm not speaking just as a victim. I don't have to go down. I have to be strong all the time, talk to them to convince them to do what I am doing. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Ngozi, we haven't had you the entire time due to technical issues, but we've always had you right when we need you, right on time, so we appreciate that. We have about 8 minutes left, and I have one more question I'd like to ask the panel. And perhaps, Ngozi, we can start with you while we have you. My question is simple but complicated. What gives you hope when you think about intergenerational healing? What gives you hope? And if we could take maybe 90 seconds each. Yeah.
What gives me hope when we talk about intergenerational healing is the community practice. Like, I am coming from the area of genocide, issues that are still lingering till date. So we have youths that are agitative. So when we come, we will have this community practice of survivors coming together to, talk to each other, give advices to each other, focusing on survival leadership too. All those gives me hope, community resilience and solidarity. Coming together as a community, speaking with one voice, it gives me hope. When I promote ethical standards, for survivors healing, it's in the global world, it helps. Survivor finding voices of survivors alone gives me hope, because when survivors speak, when they speak out, they help other survivors. They help the anti-torture movements, a great deal, because our lived experiences are so much, involved in issues of trauma healing. So when we speak out, we ease our pains, we ease our trauma. It helps us to hold it. All this gives me hope. It gives me hope, really. Like I have a survivor platform I have now. Yes, survivors and networking. In that platform, other survivors come together, they speak out, we discuss issues, we think of how to move forward. That network I just started is helping me a whole lot to talk to other survivors. It gives me hope that tomorrow could be better. Tomorrow could be healing for these survivors.
Amen. Thank you. Leon, same question. What gives you hope?
Yeah, thank you. What gives me hope? Three things quickly. One is the increase in peer support communities where survivors talk to survivors. Second one is really decentralization of healing, where I start to see community health workers, local, leaders, local pastors be involved in the healing process. And then justice as part of a healing process. I'm starting to see voices speaking out for justice for survivors. And I know that it's going to have a big impact into the healing process, into intergenerational trauma. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Seganat, any thoughts? What gives you hope in terms of intergenerational healing?
I think for me, still, I don't believe that it's getting the recognition that it needed, but like the fact that like schools or training providers now beginning to talk about it, like conversation like this one is very helpful. And the fact that like I'm seeing people like us is entering to the field, the work that we're doing, it's very impactful, and we can talk about it, and also we can bring the solution together, including advocacy as well. This gives me hope. Yeah.
Outstanding, thank you. And Neris, I think it's only appropriate you get the last word on this question. I'm wondering, what gives you hope when you look at intergenerational healing?
Bueno, primeramente siento que la esperanza es la que menos debemos de perder, porque la he venido lidiando esta esperanza desde niña, verla con mis abuelas y esa transgeneracional de la esperanza con luz. Y el hecho de que veo ahora muchas organizaciones, personas luchando como abogados, como tú, como organizaciones que están aquí presentes, que la lucha no la estamos haciendo sola y que entre más personas se involucren, entre más ayuda tengamos, eso para mí es no perder la esperanza ni que la esperanza se muera. Porque lo último que podemos tener es que se nos muera la esperanza. Y esa esperanza a veces yo la busco de qué color es la esperanza. ¿Qué tipo de fe tiene la esperanza? Entonces para mí esa esperanza es como la raíz de ese árbol, del rizoma del árbol, que tiene una raíz que la tiene bien adentro y está esparcida por todas partes. Y ese es el rizoma que yo me siento ahora aquí y lo veo en todas partes, de que la esperanza no se debe de morir, ya sea para las personas que nos ayudan, como las que estamos tratando de ayudar. Y pienso que esa luz, la esperanza con luz, no se debe apagar. Es como una vela que la tenemos de por vida y eso nos da fuerza, energía, poder entre todos ustedes. La esperanza es íntegra, la esperanza es unida, la esperanza es el rizoma que tenemos. Para mí esa es la esperanza.
Well, first of all, what I feel is that we should not lose hope. We should be fighting with hope. Like my grandma taught me, it is the intergenerational light that keeps us. And now, knowing that there are so many organizations present, fighters like you, an attorney, and every organization there, it makes me feel I'm not fighting alone. There are other persons involved. We do have help, and hope should never die. And hope should be considered a color. It's like faith. It's sort of roots that give life to a tree. The tree has the shape of a rhizoma that is spreading out everywhere. And hope should never die on us and in our survivors. And it's a light. It's the candle for, sort of a candle for life. It's the energy that perseveres. It's solid and it makes us united.
I can't think of better words to bring this particular session towards a close. I hope you folks are feeling out there, and those who are virtual, what I'm feeling up here, and what an honor it is to be with these incredible, resilient people with their histories that have touched them profoundly, and their efforts and the work they have put forth that are touching other people profoundly, including all of us that are here. So I want to say thank you so very much for that. And my gosh, could we please give them a round of applause, folks? So we'll be taking a 15-minute break, and then come right on back at 3 o'clock. We got more good stuff for you. Once again, thank you so very much.